When Taehyung finally asked the question, he already knew it might destroy him. The words had lived in his chest for years, buried beneath performances, laughter, fan chants, and carefully measured smiles. He had practiced saying them in his head 1,000 times, always imagining a different setting. Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, somewhere Jungkook would look at him the way he used to. But life never offered mercy like that. The backstage hallway was dim, lit by flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed softly overhead. Sweat clung to Taehyung's skin, his black stage shirt still damp from the performance, his pulse refusing to slow even though the music had long faded. Outside the arena walls, the crowd roared, millions of voices chanting Jungkook's name, unaware that just a few steps away, something fragile was about to shatter. Jungkook stood in front of him, still catching his breath, white dress shirt clinging to his frame, rainwater darkening the fabric where it had soaked through hours earlier. He looked unreal like this, untouchable, like someone who belonged to the world more than he belonged to Taehyung. Taehyung swallowed. He had promised himself he wouldn't do this tonight. Not after the encore. Not after the confession Jungkook had slipped into his final meant like a secret wrapped in poetry. But something about the way Jungkook's voice had cracked on stage, something about the way his eyes had searched the crowd, had unraveled every defense Taehyung had left. "You don't get to say things like that and walk away," Taehyung said quietly. Jungkook froze. The hallway seemed to narrow, the air thickening between them. Distant cheers pulsed through the walls like a second heartbeat, mocking the silence now stretching too long. "I need to know," Taehyung continued, his voice steady even as his hands trembled at his sides. "Was any of it real?" Jungkook turned fully toward him then, eyes dark, unreadable. "No," Taehyung cut in, the sound sharper than he intended. "Don't soften it, don't joke, don't dodge." He stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from Jungkook's skin. "I'm tired of metaphors, I'm tired of guessing." Jungkook's jaw tightened. He looked past Taehyung down the hallway as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. Taehyung felt something in his chest begin to crack. For years, Jungkook had been like this, present but unreachable, close but always drifting, always smiling, always careful, always letting Taehyung orbit him without ever pulling him close enough to stay. "I loved you before I knew what love even was," Taehyung said, the confession slipping out before he could stop it. "And you let me believe that meant something." Jungkook flinched. "And then you smiled with her," Taehyung continued, each word heavier than the last. "You stood beside her. You let the world believe she was the one you chose, while I learned how to disappear quietly." "That's not fair," Jungkook said hoarsely. "But it's true." The silence that followed was brutal. Taehyung watched Jungkook's chest rise and fall rapidly, watched his fingers twitch like he wanted to reach out but didn't dare. He had seen this hesitation too many times. The pause before a joke, the pause before a deflection, the pause that always meant Taehyung would be the one left holding the weight. "Not tonight." Taehyung inhaled slowly, grounding himself. There was no choreography now, no camera angles, no script, just two people standing in the wreckage of everything they hadn't said. "Do you love me?" Taehyung asked. The question was barely louder than a whisper, but it landed between them like an explosion. Jungkook didn't answer. 1 second passed. 2. 3. Taehyung felt every moment stretch, each heartbeat echoing in his ears. Jungkook's eyes flickered with something, panic, fear, longing, but his mouth stayed closed. 4 seconds. 5. That pause shattered something inside Taehyung. It was louder than a scream, more violent than a rejection, because silence wasn't confusion. Silence was a choice. Taehyung's throat burned, but he refused to let his voice break. "You don't get to ask me to wait anymore," he said quietly. "Not after everything you did." Jungkook finally moved, stepping forward instinctively, but Taehyung stepped back. "No," Taehyung said, I won't beg for clarity anymore." The ceiling light flickered. Somewhere down the corridor, a door slammed. The world kept moving, indifferent to the moment that would haunt them both. Taehyung turned away. Not in anger, not even in sadness, just with a hollow finality that scared him more than rage ever could. Behind him, he heard Jungkook's breath hitch, felt the unspoken plea hanging in the air, but Taehyung didn't turn back. He had spent too many years chasing echoes. He didn't sleep that night. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his apartment, city lights bleeding into the dark like stars drowning in concrete. His phone buzzed endlessly on the counter, messages from the group chat, from managers, from numbers he didn't want to see. He ignored them all. All he could hear was the pause. That unbearable silence replaying in his head like a cruel loop, the way Jungkook's eyes had searched his face, the way he hadn't said no, the way he hadn't said yes either. Silence was worse. Silence gave hope just enough room to rot. Morning came quietly, gray and heavy. Taehyung poured himself coffee he didn't drink, changed clothes he didn't notice. His body ached, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of holding himself together for too long. The doorbell rang. He froze. No one came over unannounced anymore, especially not after nights like this. For one foolish second, his heart leapt. But when he opened the door, it was Jungkook. It was Namjoon. Namjoon didn't bother with greetings. He stepped inside, arms crossed, disappointment etched deep into his expression. "What the hell are you doing?" Taehyung closed the door slowly. "I could ask you the same thing." "You walked away," Namjoon said, "after everything." Taehyung laughed, bitter and hollow. "I waited for years. I think that earns me one exit." Namjoon's voice softened, but his eyes didn't. He confessed on stage, and then he went silent in private. That stopped Namjoon cold. Taehyung exhaled shakily. "I can survive rejection. I can survive being told no, but I can't survive being kept in limbo forever." Namjoon didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, like someone finally seeing the full shape of the damage. "He needs to tell you the truth," Namjoon said eventually. "So do I," Taehyung replied, "and I just did." Outside, the city kept breathing. Inside, something fragile had finally broken free. Taehyung thought walking away would make the noise stop. He was wrong. By noon, his name was already trending, not loudly, not explosively, but in the dangerous way that felt like a slow burn. Clips from the concert replayed endlessly across social media. Fans dissected every glance, every breath, every second Jungkook's voice had wavered on stage. They zoomed in on Taehyung's expression during the encore, on the way he hadn't smiled, on the way he had turned away too quickly when the lights dimmed. Speculation grew like mold in a sealed room. Taehyung didn't open any of it. He spent the day moving through his apartment like a ghost, the curtains half drawn, the TV muted. The silence inside felt heavier than the cheers ever had. He replayed the hallway scene against his will, the question, the pause, the look on Jungkook's face when Taehyung stepped back. That look was the problem. It wasn't empty, it wasn't cold, it was terrified. And that scared Taehyung more than indifference ever could. By evening, the group chat exploded. Jin sent a meme that missed the mark entirely. Hoseok followed with a single heart emoji that felt like a question. Jimin typed, erased, typed again, then finally sent. "Are you okay?" Namjoon said nothing. Jungkook didn't message at all. That silence hit harder than Taehyung expected. Not because he needed an apology, not because he wanted to hear excuses, but because some small, traitorous part of him had believed Jungkook would fight harder, that he would show up at the door, that he would say something, anything, to break the stillness. Instead, hours passed. Then days. And the silence grew teeth. The first unofficial video appeared 2 days later. Shaky footage from a fan outside the venue, zoomed in too far, grainy and intimate in the way only stolen moments could be. Taehyung was captured walking toward a van, head down, eyes red, jaw locked tight. A fan's voice trembled as she asked, "Taehyung, are you okay?" He had looked up instinctively and smiled. It was the kind of smile that fooled no one. "I'm just tired of lies," he'd said softly. "Aren't you?" The clip went viral within hours. The internet exploded. Was he talking about Jungkook, the company, the dating rumors, internal conflict? Fans split into camps, theories multiplying faster than facts. Headlines speculated. Analysts dissected tone and body language. Think pieces bloomed overnight. Taehyung watched none of it. He heard about it from Namjoon, who showed up again unannounced, eyes tired, phone buzzing relentlessly in his pocket. "You can't keep disappearing," Namjoon said gently. Taehyung leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "I'm not disappearing, I'm breathing." Namjoon hesitated. "He's spiraling." That got Taehyung's attention. "Jungkook hasn't slept," Namjoon continued. "He hasn't eaten properly. He keeps replaying the footage, keeps asking what he should say." "What he should say," Taehyung repeated quietly, "not what he feels." Namjoon didn't argue. "He wants to see you." Taehyung closed his eyes. For a moment the old instinct flared, to rush back, to fix it, to make himself smaller so Jungkook could stay comfortable. The urge was familiar, dangerous. "No," Taehyung said finally, "not like this." Namjoon studied him carefully. "You've changed." "I had to," Taehyung replied. "Waiting was killing me." That night, Taehyung left the apartment for the first time in days. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, but his feet carried him without hesitation. Some habits lived too deep to erase. He walked along the river, the city lights trembling across the water like broken promises. This was where he used to come after long practices, after arguments, after nights when being seen felt too heavy. He didn't expect Jungkook to be there. But Jungkook always knew the same hiding places. Taehyung spotted him near the railing, hands shoved into the pockets of an oversized coat, shoulders hunched despite the mild night. He looked smaller somehow, less polished, like the boy Taehyung had met years ago before the world taught them how to pretend. Taehyung slowed his steps. Jungkook didn't turn around. He spoke first, voice rough and quiet. "I thought you'd stop answering me forever." Taehyung stopped beside him, leaving just enough space to breathe. "I almost did." "Why?" "Because I was scared I'd cave." Jungkook let out a bitter laugh. "You always were stronger than me." Taehyung turned to face him. "That's not true. I just got tired of being brave alone." The silence between them settled again, but this time it felt different. Heavy, yes, but listening. Jungkook stared at the water. "You asked me something I should have answered years ago." "And you didn't," Taehyung said calmly. "So now I'm done asking." Jungkook flinched. "I didn't say I don't love you." Taehyung's chest tightened, but he held his ground. "You didn't say you do either." "I was scared," Jungkook admitted, "of what it would mean, of what it would cost." Taehyung nodded slowly. "I know, I paid that cost anyway." Jungkook turned then, desperation clear in his eyes. "I never chose her." "But you let her choose you," Taehyung replied. "And you let me believe I wasn't enough to be chosen publicly." The words landed hard. "I thought hiding us was protecting you," Jungkook whispered. Taehyung laughed softly, without humor. "You were protecting the version of yourself that didn't have to decide." Jungkook swallowed. "What do you want from me now?" Taehyung looked out over the river, watching the lights fracture and reform. "The truth, not when it's safe, not when it's convenient, now." Jungkook hesitated. "And if the truth ruins everything?" Taehyung met his gaze. "Then at least it will be real." For the first time that night, Jungkook didn't look away. "I love you," he said, voice shaking. I always have. Taehyung felt the words hit him like a wave, familiar, overwhelming, and terrifying. He didn't smile. He didn't reach out. Love isn't the part I doubt, Taehyung said quietly. It's your courage. Jungkook stepped closer. Then tell me what to do. Taehyung took a breath. Show me. Don't ask me to wait in the dark again. They stood there for a long moment, the city humming around them, unaware that something irrevocable had already shifted. From a distance, a camera lens caught them side by side. By morning, that image would be everywhere, and the world would start demanding answers. Taehyung walked away first this time, but not because he was running, because he was finally done chasing. The morning sun cut through the city fog, but inside Jungkook's apartment it barely mattered. The soft gray light didn't reach the corners where the weight of the past days had settled like dust. His phone vibrated incessantly on the hardwood floor. He hadn't touched it since dawn. Namjoon's messages glowed in a persistent streak. Have you talked to him yet? You need to fix this. He's waiting. Jungkook sat cross-legged by the window, staring down at the streets where people moved with careless purpose, unaware that his world had shifted irreversibly. He thought about Taehyung, how he had turned away that night, the way his eyes had glimmered with a mixture of anger and grief. The silence between them wasn't just absence. It was a force that had shaken Jungkook to his core. By late morning, Taehyung's name trended on every platform. Headlines screamed, Taehyung's confession sparks global outcry. Idol's silence breaks fans' hearts. What did he mean? A love story unfolding live. The comment sections were a battlefield. Some pleaded for truth, others demanded explanations. There were fans who were furious, accusing, dissecting every glance, every sigh, every wordless interaction from the past 7 years. Jungkook didn't read a single comment, not one. The first phone call came from the agency. Jungkook's stomach twisted when he heard the formal voice of the executive trying to sound calm. We need to discuss the situation immediately, the voice said. It's spreading faster than we can control. Jungkook's throat felt dry. I'm aware, he muttered. He hung up before they could respond. He hadn't noticed the hours slipping away. He hadn't moved from the window, until finally he felt the shift, the subtle, almost imperceptible buzz of presence behind him. Taehyung was standing there, backlit by the sunlight spilling through the blinds. His hair fell over his forehead just slightly, the edges damp from some recent shower, perhaps a walk in the rain, perhaps just nerves. Are you ready? Taehyung's voice was low, steady, but beneath it something trembled, something real. Jungkook hesitated, feeling a mix of anticipation and terror. Ready for what? Taehyung stepped closer. To stop hiding, to stop pretending. You've been holding back and so have I. The world's already watching. They've been waiting. Let's decide if it's worth everything. Jungkook's chest tightened. He knew the stakes. They weren't just personal. Careers, reputations, fan bases, contracts, everything they'd built was fragile and exposed now. But looking at Taehyung, seeing the quiet determination in his eyes, he realized he couldn't run. Not anymore. I don't know if I'm ready, Jungkook whispered, though he knew he had to be. You'll never be ready if you keep waiting, Taehyung said, voice soft but cutting. You need to choose. Do you want to keep living in silence or do you want to speak the truth? The tension between them was almost tangible. Every unspoken word hung like smoke in the room, thick and suffocating. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Then I choose you, he said finally. His voice was shaky, faltering, but it was honest. Taehyung's lips twitched, almost a smile. Finally. The agency meeting was scheduled for noon. They were led into a sleek, sterile conference room, the walls white and cold. Executives in tailored suits lined the long table, their faces masks of calculated concern. The atmosphere was tense, almost suffocating. Sit, one of the executives said sharply. We need to discuss your next steps. Taehyung and Jungkook exchanged a glance, brief, fleeting, but full of unspoken understanding. They sat side by side, hands barely brushing. Not holding, not yet, but connected. Charts and graphs were laid out. Social media metrics, fan sentiment, brand risk assessments, potential sponsorship losses. Every slide made the world feel smaller, oppressive, yet somehow less important than the conversation they were about to have with each other. One executive leaned forward. The exposure is unprecedented. If you proceed with this confession, there are serious consequences. Contracts may be terminated, endorsements may be pulled, solo projects canceled. Are you aware of this? Taehyung didn't flinch. We are. The executive's eyes narrowed. Do you understand the implications? We do, Jungkook said quietly, and we accept them. The room fell silent, stunned by their conviction. No one had anticipated their resolve. The executives whispered among themselves, the tension almost snapping the sterile air into shards. Later, walking out of the meeting, Taehyung reached for Jungkook's hand. Their fingers intertwined for the first time in public, subtle but deliberate. The flash of cameras outside was blinding, and yet neither of them flinched. For once, they weren't performing. They weren't idols acting out a carefully choreographed scene. They were just two people, messy, vulnerable, fearless in a way they hadn't allowed themselves to be in years. The press conference was set for the evening. The lobby was buzzing with reporters, cameras, microphones, and the hum of anxious energy. Staff tried to control the chaos, but it was impossible. The tension was palpable, a living thing that seemed to press against Taehyung and Jungkook as they were led into the conference hall. Sitting at the table, side by side, Taehyung's gaze met Jungkook's. No words, just understanding. When the first question came, it wasn't the usual rehearsed inquiry about promotions or projects. It was pointed, sharp. Is it true? Are you in a relationship? The room fell into an anticipatory hush. Every eye was on them. Every camera was poised. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Yes, he said, voice steady, we're together. The words exploded like a bomb in the sterile hall. Flashbulbs ignited. Questions flew faster than anyone could answer, but Taehyung squeezed his hand gently under the table. Their fingers locked, a silent promise. I'm not saying this for attention, Jungkook continued, his voice gaining strength. I'm not saying it for applause or to shock anyone. I'm saying it because it's the truth, and for years I wasn't brave enough to say it. Taehyung's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, to confess, to undo years of distance and misunderstanding, but he let Jungkook continue. I love him, Jungkook said finally, eyes unwavering, looking directly at the cameras, the press, the world. I've always loved him, and I will continue to love him, regardless of what the world says. Silence fell, then chaos erupted. Reporters shouted, cameras clicked in a frenzy, assistants scrambled to regain control, but neither Taehyung nor Jungkook moved. They didn't need to. They had claimed their truth. Later backstage, Taehyung exhaled slowly. His hand found Jungkook again, this time openly. You really said it, he whispered. I had to, Jungkook replied, eyes glistening. I couldn't live another day in silence. Taehyung nodded. The weight of months, years of fear, of uncertainty seemed to lift, if only slightly. We'll face whatever comes next, he said. Together. Together, Taehyung affirmed. The day after the press conference, the world had changed. Social media was ablaze with every angle of their confession, every reaction dissected into GIFs, memes, and viral threads. Fans were divided. Some cheered, flooded the platforms with heart emojis, videos of past performances replayed with new meaning. Others were furious, claiming betrayal, accusing them of deceiving the fandom for years. The agency tried to control the narrative, but the confession had broken their meticulously curated image. Taehyung and Jungkook didn't sleep that night. They sat in their apartment, side by side on the floor, the faint hum of the city beneath them. The room smelled faintly of soju and leftover takeout. Taehyung's fingers tapped nervously on the floor. Jungkook's eyes were fixed on the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the plaster, imagining them as the fractures of their past, slowly being repaired. You think they'll forgive us? Jungkook asked finally, voice low, tired but firm. Taehyung's gaze didn't leave the window. Some will, some won't, but I don't care, not anymore. I just care about us. Their world outside had erupted, but inside this small, dim apartment, there was a fragile kind of peace. They had survived the confession. Now they had to survive the aftermath. By mid-morning, the agency called for another meeting. This time, the room was colder, more tense. Executives hovered over charts showing the viral spread, fan sentiment percentages, and potential financial fallout. Your decision has caused an unprecedented reaction, the spokesperson began. Sponsors are reconsidering contracts. Some markets are threatening legal action. Your actions put the brand at risk. Taehyung leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. We knew that. We accept the consequences. The room was silent for a moment, stunned by his defiance. Jungkook glanced at Taehyung, admiration and fear tangled in his chest. He had known Taehyung could be bold, fearless even, but this was another level. One executive finally spoke, voice sharp. You understand what this means. If the backlash continues, there will be personal consequences for each of you. Termination of contracts, suspended projects, public apologies required. Then we'll face it, Jungkook said, his voice steady. Together. They were dismissed, but the press outside the building was already waiting, cameras flashing relentlessly. Reporters shouted questions, phones were shoved forward, microphones thrust into the air. Some tried to catch a reaction, some simply wanted to see them falter. Taehyung and Jungkook walked through the crowd hand in hand, calm, composed, yet their hands told the story of everything unspoken, the fear, the love, the defiance. By evening they were back in their apartment. The quiet was deceptive. Jungkook scrolled through endless fan messages, reading words of love, support, outrage, and disbelief. Taehyung watched him, expression unreadable. They're not all going to hate us, Taehyung said softly. Some of them will understand. Some of them already do. We just have to be patient. I know, Jungkook murmured, but it feels like we're standing on the edge of a storm, and I don't know if we can hold on to each other when it hits. You already have, Taehyung replied, and we will. Days passed in a blur of interviews, cautious media appearances, and private conversations with managers and advisors. Each day brought new headlines. Idols confess, the true story of Taehyung and Jungkook. Fans react to BTS stars' love revelation, the PR nightmare or a cultural shift. Each headline was a reminder of the world they had challenged with nothing but the truth. At night in the quiet of their apartment, they replayed memories, silent rehearsals, shared laughs, moments stolen between interviews and fan meetings. Every shared glance, every touch that had gone unnoticed now carried weight. They talked, sometimes in whispers, sometimes shouting at the ceiling, venting frustration, confessing fears, recounting old regrets. One evening, Taehyung poured 2 glasses of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the light of the single lamp in the living room. He handed one to Jungkook, who accepted it without a word. They sat across from each other, knees brushing, fingers occasionally intertwining over the glasses. Do you ever think we waited too long? Jungkook asked, voice trembling slightly. Taehyung's gaze was steady. Maybe, but what matters is that we didn't wait any longer than we had to. We said it. We're saying it now. That's all we can control. Jungkook nodded. I'm scared of what comes next. So am I, Taehyung admitted. But the difference now is that we face it together, not apart, not in silence, together. They drank in silence, the weight of the world outside pressing in but somehow more manageable when shared. Later, they sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker, imagining each light as a heartbeat, each street as a path that could lead them anywhere. The next day brought a new challenge. One of their major sponsors released a statement expressing concern over the revelations. Social media erupted again. Fans debated, rumors swirled, and the agency scrambled to manage the backlash. Taehyung read the report silently, letting the anger, frustration, and fear wash over him without reacting outwardly. Jungkook placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this," he said firmly. Taehyung nodded, but the tension lingered. They had chosen truth, but the world wasn't ready to accept it so easily. Still, for every threat, every piece of criticism, there was also love, support, and solidarity, small but significant victories that reminded them why they had chosen this path. By nightfall, the apartment was quiet again. The city hummed outside, indifferent to their struggles, yet somehow their struggle had reshaped their world. Taehyung and Jungkook sat side by side, shoulders touching, holding onto the fragile certainty that despite the chaos, despite the backlash, they had each other. "I love you," Jungkook whispered, as if the words were a shield against the world. Taehyung smiled softly, fingers brushing against Jungkook's. "I love you too, and we'll survive this, somehow. We always do." The night stretched long and heavy, but for the first time in a long time, the silence between them wasn't crushing. It was comforting. It was real. And that truth, fragile as it was enough to carry them into the next storm. The days that followed the confession were merciless. Every public appearance was scrutinized, dissected, and replayed on loop. Every smile, every glance, every silence became a story. Taehyung and Jungkook quickly learned that truth, once spoken, could ignite storms far bigger than the ones they'd imagined. Their agency tried to manage it, but the narrative had slipped beyond control. The fandom was a battlefield. Some fans rallied behind them fiercely, defending their right to love, while others accused them of betrayal, manipulation, or even selfishness. Social media became a battleground of emotions, hashtags trending globally, comments flooded with every conceivable reaction, from adoration to hatred. Inside their apartment, the constant buzz of notifications never stopped. Taehyung scrolled through them silently, his thumb hovering over the screen before letting the device rest beside him. He didn't need to read every word. He could feel the tension pressing through the walls, the energy of millions of opinions cascading over their private world. Jungkook sat beside him, knees pulled up to his chest, staring blankly at the city lights beyond the window. Both were exhausted, yet neither could sleep. The emotional adrenaline kept them awake, caught in the tension between fear, hope, and lingering guilt. Taehyung broke the silence first. "We have to be careful. Every move, every word, they're watching. Every breath we take is news." Jungkook nodded. "I know, but I can't keep hiding from them either. Not after everything, not after you." Taehyung looked at him, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "You mean me, not them." Jungkook shook his head, voice cracking just slightly. "You, always you." For a moment the tension in the room softened. They clung to that fragile connection, the one thing that hadn't been corrupted by outside forces. But the relief was fleeting. Their phones buzzed again, this time with a flurry of news notifications, interview requests, headlines about possible repercussions, fan analyses, and clips from the press conference dissected frame by frame. By mid-morning, their managers were at the door. "We need to discuss next steps," one said, urgency heavy in his voice. "Sponsors are demanding clarification. We've had inquiries from major media outlets. Some markets are threatening to withdraw contracts. We need a plan." Taehyung and Jungkook exchanged a glance, communicating silently what words couldn't convey. They would face this together, but neither was naive enough to believe it would be easy. The meeting lasted hours. Charts, graphs, statistics, potential PR disasters, legal ramifications. It was overwhelming. Taehyung listened carefully, nodding occasionally, but the storm of his own thoughts never ceased. He could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on him. The truth had liberated them emotionally, but it had also exposed them to a scrutiny that was relentless and merciless. After the meeting, they returned to their apartment. The city outside shimmered, indifferent, yet somehow the chaos of the outside world felt closer than ever. They walked through the living room in silence, each step a tentative reminder that they were no longer protected by performance, choreography, or carefully crafted images. They were vulnerable, exposed, and yet strangely more real than they had ever been. That night Taehyung suggested they take a walk. The air was crisp, and the streets were quieter than usual. They wandered through the alleys and small parks they had discovered years ago, places that had been sanctuaries during grueling practice schedules and impossible expectations. Here, away from cameras and microphones, the weight of the world was distant, though never completely gone. "You're strong," Jungkook said after a long pause, voice barely above a whisper. "Stronger than I thought you were capable of being." Taehyung laughed softly, but it carried no humor. "I had to be, for you, for me, for us, but strength doesn't mean I'm not scared." "I know," Jungkook murmured, stepping closer. His hand brushed against Taehyung's. "I'm scared too, but being scared doesn't mean giving up." Taehyung took his hand, fingers intertwining naturally. "Then we won't give up, we fight for us, no matter what." The next day brought another wave of media attention. A major international outlet ran a headline: "K-pop's biggest stars break silence. Taehyung and Jungkook confess love, fans react." The article included commentary on the potential ramifications for their careers, the cultural significance of openly declaring love, and speculation on what this meant for the agency. Every online platform was a battlefield. Taehyung felt the weight of it, but he also felt something new: empowerment. The truth had been spoken. Now it was up to the world to react. By evening, their phone buzzed again. Messages from friends, fans, and members of the group. Some were supportive, some confused, some hesitant. Taehyung read each one carefully, understanding the delicate balance between public scrutiny and personal life. Jungkook sat beside him, leaning his head against Taehyung's shoulder, exhausted but seeking comfort. "I didn't expect this," Jungkook admitted quietly. "The world, it's relentless." Taehyung nodded. "I know, but we can't control them, only us, only what we do together." A silence fell between them, heavy but grounding. They didn't need words. The presence of each other was enough. They had survived the confession, survived the storm of emotions, and now they faced the real test, navigating the aftermath. Hours later, they received a call from Namjoon, who had been monitoring everything closely. "How are you two holding up?" His voice was calm but firm, carrying the weight of responsibility. Taehyung exhaled slowly. "We're managing, we're together, that's what matters." Jungkook added, "It's overwhelming, but we can handle it. We'll handle it together." Namjoon paused. "Good, remember we're all here for you, but the world will try to tear you apart. You have to stay united." "We know," Taehyung said, his voice resolute, "and we will." That night after the conversation, they sat by the window again, watching the city below. The lights glimmered like countless eyes, watching, judging, and hopping. Taehyung rested his head against Jungkook, letting the quiet anchor them. "Do you ever regret it?" Jungkook asked softly. "Regret?" Taehyung repeated, eyes fixed on the distant skyline. "No, not for a second. It's terrifying, it's messy, it's chaotic, but it's ours. Every moment, every consequence, every truth, it's ours. And I wouldn't change that for anything." Jungkook nodded, a small smile breaking through the tension. "Then we face it together." "Yes," Taehyung whispered, "together, no matter what." Outside, the city buzzed, unaware, indifferent. But inside, they had carved a world of their own, a fragile, powerful world built on truth, courage, and love. The storm wasn't over, and the aftermath was far from resolved, but for the first time in years, they were free. The night stretched on, heavy with the promise of challenges yet to come. But in that quiet, intimate space, their hearts beat in sync. The world could wait. For now they had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next.